So this was a piece taken from, I believe, the negri.com.br website. And again, it's called The Black Man and the Myth of Male Privilege. So this is Paulo Gonzaga. When we hear about male privilege, it is common to put all men in the same package. In this way, it seems that being a man automatically guarantees a condition of power and humanity. Do all men, in fact, exercise this power? For many years, Black people have shown the need to racialize the discussions around public policies, social, economic, environmental, and political issues. When it comes to an analysis of society, we need to point out which racial group is being addressed, understanding its plurality and intersectionalities. That's a word I'm going to have to look into again. I know I say this all the time, but there's so much to talk about this whole thing with intersectionalities. It's been a main rallying cry for a number of years on the left. I don't have time to deal with that now because I want to stay focused on this material that I have today. So in Brazil, it's not enough to say that we live in a violent country. For example, we need to think Brazil is violent for whom? From there, we can point out in a racialized way that Black men and women, indigenous, quilombolas, native peoples, and riverside dwellers of this country are the most violated and killed. When we say quilombolas, these are inhabitants of Brazil's quilombos. Quilombos are the runaway, the fugitive slave maroon societies that were set up in Brazil, in the probably the 16th, 17th century. And a lot of those, hundreds of them, are still, alive and well today, still have residents today. It's incredible some of the ways that these people survive on these areas, kind of, just separate from like urban society. So if this point is not made, we end up making invisible racism as a fundamental structure that explains the violence and inequalities in society. In this sense, racialization also needs to be applied when we talk about male privilege. Which man are we talking about when we think about privilege? Frantz Fanon presents in his book, Black Skin, White Mask, the idea that the Black man is not a man. This brings us the understanding that before we are men, we are Black, and therefore stripped of the humanity and privileges of the cis hetero Christian white male. When we stop to analyze where Black men are in society, we run into them in the ditches, in the trunks of police cars, in jail, on the streets, between the hands and knees of security agents, and on the streets. There is no privilege for the Black man, only frustrated attempts to exercise white male power, which we will never have. So scenes like this of just Black males being, patted down, searched by military police in the streets, is, you can find thousands of these pictures online. Then we talk about the police population. That's something else. Brazil has slowly crept into one of the biggest prison populations on the planet. Behind the United States, I think you have China, Russia, and I think Brazil might be in 4th place by now. But a lot of people in prison in Brazil. What do we think? What do we think the majority of people are in terms of gender and according to race? The vast majority are Black and brown people with Black and brown skin, and obviously of the masculine gender. Again. According to data from the Map of Violence published in 2014, again, the Map of Violence comes out just about every year, talking about just, the statistics in a violent country. This one was published in 2014 and said that every 23 minutes, a young Black man is murdered in Brazil. When we think about the number of suicides among young people, we observe that Black adolescents from ages 10 to 19 had a higher risk, more than 2/3 of suicide, than white youth in 2016. This, according to the booklet Óbitos por Suicídio entre Adolescentes e Jovens Negros, which means deaths by suicide among Black adolescents and youth. It was put together by the Ministry of Health in conjunction with the Federal University of Brasilia and released in 2018. The Brazilian Yearbook of Public Security also points out that for every 3 inmates in Brazil, 2 are Black men and women, and the prison population is composed mostly of men, as I just said. Due to the standard of the colonizing white man that we have learned to follow, we construct a masculinity based on practices of violence, domination, competitiveness, and physical virility. These practices, learned by us Black men through the educational institutions such as church, religion, justice, family, and media, violate our bodies and that of our community. According to Henrique Hestier, during the colonization period, it was common for white colonizing men to phallically introduce themselves to women, Black and Indigenous, after the conquest of territory. That's kind of funny to me. He would use a term like phallically introduce. I mean, could have just said, okay, we know that white colonizers who came into the Americas raped Black and Indigenous women. With this act, these men demonstrated the power of male virility, the objectification of women, and the inability of the men of the conquered community to protect women. Again, this is what I'm saying. You take down the men, you kill the men, and then you take the women as just like prisoners of war. Based on this logic of power and virility of hegemonic masculinity, patriarchy is organized to produce violence against Black men and women. In a certain way, we produce this logic that has been introjected into us. And from a feeling of pseudo-virility and privilege, we continue to produce violence to ourselves, our companions, our fellow men, and our community. We must not forget that privilege takes place within the social structure, which is not the case for Black men. Although there are some advantages within some context, and this advantage has nothing to do with the production of violence, because being an aggressor is not an advantage, much less a privilege. So this is you know, the author of this piece, I think he's moving in that direction as well. It's like one of the battle cries that's been coming out of, you know, feminism has grown among Brazilian women just incredibly over the last decade or so. And a lot of the movement is being, you know, you have some of the same classic, we say, conflicts going on in movements in Brazil, where Black women have called out white women feminists for not being able to identify the racist structure of Brazil and how it affects Black people. But then we get a lot of Black feminists who are pointing the finger at all men in general, saying, well, you guys have privileges, you oppress women, you know, some of the questions that I just talked about, you know, earlier in this video. And some Black men are pushing back saying, we don't have any power. Why are you pointing the finger at us? We're the ones who are most victimized in this country. So while it is, there will be Black women who will become the heads of household when a Black man is taken out or killed, you could argue like, okay, but you're still around. The man that you're marching for, you're trying to hold up the family, that man was killed. How can we even make a comparison there? Saying, you know, who's more oppressed when, you know, the female head of the family still has her life to carry on with, whereas, you know, the Black male lost his life already. So anyway, this is a huge conversation going on in Brazil right now. And as I said, this is something that I want to delve more into, because if you really believe in something, that you have the opinion that you believe a particular fact or theory, then you should be able to argue and, you know, stand your ground. But what I'm finding is that, and it's not just with, say, feminism, it's not just with Black rights movements, you know, the politics that we see between the left and the right or whatever, I consistently find that, okay, once upon a time I believed this, but then taking a closer look at the background and coming to other conclusions. So this is another like introduction piece, because I'm going to be delving into some of these topics a little bit more in coming videos. So with that said, I'm going to end this video here, and I'm going to ask again, if you like this material, you know, do give me a thumbs up, consider sharing this material, subscribing to the channel, and clicking on that notification button so you'll be one of the first people to be able to see one of my videos as soon as I put it up. So with that said, I'll see you all in the next video, hopefully.